I've been a hospital nurse for 11 years and I deal only in facts. But after what I found left behind on the visitor's chair in room 9, I will never sit in a hospital room again without checking the cushion first. I need to start by saying that I am not the kind of person who believes in things they can't explain. I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse for 11 years. I have worked night shifts in 3 different hospitals, and I have seen things that would make most people's stomachs turn. Not supernatural things, just the honest reality of what happens to human bodies when they fail. I deal in facts. Vital signs, medication charts, clinical observations. I do not deal in feelings or impressions or things that go bump in the dark. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand that what I am about to describe is not something I have arrived at icily. I spent 8 months trying to explain it away. I tried exhaustion, I tried stress, I tried the specific psychological phenomenon where the sleep-deprived brain generates false perceptions. I have a graduate degree, with a colleague who specializes in trauma psychology. None of it holds up, so I'm going to tell you what happened, exactly what happened, and I'm going to let you decide. Mercy General is a mid-sized regional hospital in the Midwest. I won't give you the exact location because some of the people involved still work there, and because frankly I don't want to go back even in my mind more than I already have to for the purposes of this account. I had been working the night shift on Ward 7 for about 8 months when this happened. Ward 7 was the long-term care ward, patients who were not in immediate crises, but who required ongoing medical supervision. Many of them were elderly. Many of them had been there for weeks or months. You get to know them on the night shift. You spend more time with them than their families do in some cases. The ward had 14 rooms. 12 of them were occupied the night I'm talking about. I was one of 2 nurses on duty, myself and a colleague named Patricia, who had been at Mercy General for 20 years, and who was, in my experience, the most unflappable human being I had ever met. The story begins at 3:17 a.m. I know the exact time because I had just completed my medication round and logged the completion in the system, and the timestamp is right there in the records if anyone ever wanted to verify it. Room 9 was occupied by a patient I'll call Mr. Alderman. He was 81 years old, admitted 6 weeks earlier following a stroke that had left him largely nonverbal. He could communicate in limited ways, yes and no, basic gestures, but sustained conversation was beyond him. He slept most of the time. During my 8 months on Ward 7, I had never once had a significant interaction with Mr. Alderman beyond basic care. At 3:17 a.m. the call light for room 9 came on. This was unusual. Mr. Alderman had never used his call light before, to my knowledge. Most nights he slept straight through until morning without requiring any attention beyond the standard checks. I went to his room. He was awake, sitting up in bed, which was itself unusual. Sitting up required effort that he didn't typically make at 3 in the morning. He was looking at the far corner of the room, the corner where the visitor's chair was, next to the window. The chair was empty. "Mr. Alderman," I said, coming around to his side of the bed, "everything okay?" He didn't look at me. He kept looking at the corner. I followed his gaze. The corner was empty, as I said. Chair, window showing the dark parking lot outside, the standard hospital equipment along the wall. Nothing unusual. "Mr. Alderman." I touched his arm gently. "Can you look at me?" He looked at me then. And I want to be precise about what I saw in his expression because it matters. It was not confusion, which is what I was expecting. Some degree of disorientation is common in elderly patients waking in the night. It was not distress exactly. It was something more like the expression of someone who has just witnessed something very significant and is not yet sure what to do with that information. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he shook his head, slowly, deliberately, the way you shake your head when someone has said something that is not a matter of opinion. He pointed at the corner again. I checked the corner thoroughly, looked behind the chair, checked the bathroom, checked the closet. Empty. I reset his call light, made sure he was comfortable, noted the episode in his chart as possible nocturnal confusion, and went back to the nurse's station. Patricia looked up from her paperwork. Mr. Alderman? Call light. He was pointing at his corner. Thought someone was there. Patricia looked at me for a moment with an expression I couldn't quite read, then looked back down at her paperwork. She said, which I didn't think anything of at the time. The call light for room 9 came on again at 4:14 a.m. I went back. Mr. Alderman was in exactly the same position, sitting up, looking at the corner. But this time when I came in, he turned to look at me immediately, and he reached out and grabbed my wrist. His grip was surprisingly strong. He pointed at the corner with his free hand. I already checked, I said. There's nothing there. I already checked, I said. There's nothing there. He shook his head again. Then he did something he had never done in the 8 months I had known him. He spoke. It wasn't clear speech. The stroke had taken that from him. But it was recognizable as an attempt at a specific word repeated twice with unmistakable urgency. It sounded like leaving, or possibly leaving. I stood there holding his hand, and I felt for the first time that night something that was not clinical concern, but something older and more instinctive. The back of my neck felt cold. The corner of the room, which I was now looking at directly over Mr. Alderman's shoulder, looked exactly the same as it had before. Chair, window, darkness outside. Is someone leaving? I asked, not because I believed there was someone there, but because something in his face told me that precise language mattered. He looked at me. Then he looked at the corner. Then he looked back at me and nodded, once with the specific finality of someone confirming something they have already accepted. Then he lay back down, closed his eyes, and within 2 minutes was asleep. I stood in the room for another 30 seconds before I left. I noted the second episode in his chart. I went back to the nurse's station. He spoke. I told Patricia. She looked up. He said leaving, or something that sounded like leaving. Patricia set her pen down. She looked at me with that expression again, the one I hadn't been able to read earlier. I could read it now. It wasn't surprise. It was something much quieter than surprise.
Which corner?
She asked. The one by the window, by the visitor's chair. She nodded slowly and picked up her pen again. Patricia, I said, what is it? She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, without looking up, room 9 has had that visitor before. I waited. 3 times in the 4 years since that room was renovated, she said. Always the corner by the window. Always around this time of night. Always with a patient who is, she paused, choosing the word carefully. Close. Close to what? She looked at me then. Close to the end, she said simply. 6 a.m. Mr. Alderman passed away at 6 a.m. exactly. There was no medical drama, no crash cart, no code, no emergency. His vitals simply declined, quietly and steadily, over the course of about 40 minutes, and at 6 o'clock in the morning, his heart stopped. Patricia and I were both present. It was, in the clinical sense, a peaceful death. I stood at his bedside afterward and looked at the corner of the room. The chair was empty. The window showed the first gray light of dawn beginning to appear over the parking lot. Everything was exactly as it had always been. I thought about what he had said. That one word or near word, repeated twice with such urgency. Leaving. I've thought about it many times since. Here is what I keep coming back to. He wasn't afraid. That's the thing I can't get past, the thing that doesn't fit any of the explanations I've tried to apply. In my experience, patients who experience nocturnal confusion are frightened by it, disoriented, agitated, distressed. Mr. Alderman was not frightened. He was trying to tell me something. 3 weeks after Mr. Alderman died, Patricia and I were alone at the nurse's station during a quiet stretch of the night shift, and I asked her directly about what she had said. about room 9 having that visitor before. She was quiet for a long time. Then she told me about the first time. A patient named Mrs. Kowalski, 4 years ago. 87 years old, end-stage heart failure. Called her night nurse at 3 a.m. pointing at the corner by the window. Couldn't say what she was pointing at. Passed away before the morning shift came on. Then a man named Mr. Chun 2 years later. 79, advanced cancer. Same thing, middle of the night, call light pointing at the corner. Tried to describe what he saw to Patricia, who spoke limited Mandarin. The word he used, Patricia said, translated roughly as companion or the one who walks with. He was gone within 6 hours. And then Mr. Alderman. 3 times in 4 years, I said. That I know of, Patricia said. I've only been on nights. There may have been others on the day shift. I don't ask. Why not? She looked at me over her reading glasses. 'Cause I think some things are not mine to understand, she said. I think some things are between a person and whatever comes next. I think my job is to make sure they're comfortable and not alone. She paused. That's all any of us can do. I transferred to a different ward 6 months after Mr. Alderman died. Not because of what happened, at least that's what I told myself. For professional development reasons. To try something different. I have never worked a night shift on Ward 7 again. But I will tell you the last thing, the detail I have never told anyone except Patricia. The thing I left out of my chart notes because there was no clinical category for it and because I wasn't sure, in the moment, whether I had actually seen it or whether my exhausted brain had generated it to fill a gap. When I stood at the corner of room 9 that second time, at 4:14 a.m., after Mr. Alderman had fallen back asleep, I looked very carefully at the visitor's chair. The chair had an upholstered seat, gray fabric, standard hospital issue. There was an indentation in it, the kind of indentation a seat cushion makes when someone has been sitting in it for a long time. I stood there looking at that indentation for a long time. Then I went back to the nurse's station, and I sat down, and I did not say anything to Patricia for the rest of the shift. I have never fully decided what I believe about what happened in room 9, but I have never, in the 5 years since, been able to sit in a chair, in a hospital room, without checking the cushion first. The darkness is spreading, and the secrets of the Blackwater Files are just beginning to unravel. If you want to survive the next chapter, subscribe now and turn on the notifications. Don't let the truth stay buried in the dark.